We've got a ton of new gameplay for Star Wars Outlaws and exclusive info from interviews with the developers. So let's talk about everything we learned from space exploration and combat to the game's interesting take on skills that it calls experts, which might lead you to meet a familiar face. And one of the things I noticed in this new gameplay is how useful your companion Nyx is going to be, especially for stealth. For starters, he functions as this game's eagle vision, allowing you to spot and keep track of enemies through walls. You can command him to interact with certain things in the environment to, for example, drop a chandelier on someone's head to knock them out, or rig an explosive barrel to trigger when an enemy walks past it. But you also have several options to have him engage with enemies from stealth. You can command Nyx to attack, which gives Kay some time to eliminate another enemy and then move in for a melee kill. But you can also command Nyx to steal an enemy's weapon and I assume have them bring it to you, or you can detonate a target's grenade, which sounds like a nice way to take out multiple enemies at once, although I assume the following noise also means you break stealth. However, in this example, the player chooses to have Nyx play dead, which distracts the stormtroopers so Kay can sneak up on them and knock them out. And while some of these skills will be unlocked from the start, Kay will grow as an outlaw thanks to a very interesting system called experts. Instead of having an entire skill tree available from the get-go, Kay needs to hunt down criminal experts that can help her upgrade her ship, her speeder, and her own set of skills and abilities. Lando, who we briefly spotted in one of the trailers, is actually one of these experts, and we learned even more about this system because Jordan was able to interview the developers in LA. What he learned is that there's a bit of a sequence to these experts, so first you have to track them down by gathering intel, which is what we saw in the gameplay at Ubisoft Forward. Then you track down the expert and do some missions for them to gain their trust, so I think that means we're going to have a questline with Lando Calrissian, which is pretty cool. After you gain their trust, they grant you access to a new upgrade path. More upgrades can then be unlocked by completing challenges, and even a single expert can offer a good variety of skills and upgrades. So you want to hunt all of these down because Jordan also learned that not all experts are tied to the main story, so you have to go out of your way to track down the rest if you want every skill. And while some skills are useful for stealth and infiltration, I'm guessing there are also some that help you when things go south and you're forced into open combat. While I still don't know how to feel about only having a blaster pistol as your main weapon, it does force you to take in the environment a lot more. Explosive barrels are super useful for taking out groups of enemies, and a nearby weapon rack can provide you with a more accurate and powerful blaster rifle. Now these of course overheat, after which you have to switch back to your blaster, but there's enough ammo here to blast a couple of troopers. Plus there are also consumables scattered around like thermal detonators and what I think are healing stims, so enough to give you an edge over a battalion of stormtroopers. And you shouldn't underestimate your blaster either, as it's a surprisingly versatile tool. The basic firing mode is useful in combat, but you also have a stun shot that can be used to instantly take out an enemy. It's on a short cooldown and looks to be mostly useful for stealth. Not sure if there are any restrictions to using it in combat because a free one-shot kill seems pretty powerful to me. What definitely works in combat are your ion bolts, which have several functions. For one, they're used to counter enemies with an energy shield, as a few hits with your ion blaster will overload the shield. The same is also true for droid enemies, but when they overload, they'll blow up in a giant explosion that stuns nearby enemies if they get hit. And you can also trigger this effect by simply shooting ion blasts at a regular enemy, then move in close to take them out with some melee hits after they are stunned. Luckily, Kay is pretty agile, so it shouldn't be too much trouble to get up into someone's face. She also has access to a slide that she can use to quickly duck into cover at the end of a sprint, and since it doesn't look like you have a ton of health, I think cover is going to be pretty important. To keep yourself safe, you can also blind fire from cover, which is less accurate, but it also doesn't put you in the line of fire. And as a last resort, you have a Deadeye style meter that allows you to mark multiple targets, then take them out with a quick series of blaster shots. This needs to be recharged after using it, presumably through combat or stealth takedowns, but it's a really easy way to quickly deal with multiple enemies in the heat of battle. Now while combat looks like a lot of fun, it's not always in your best interest to go in guns blazing, as getting spotted while attacking a criminal syndicate will influence your reputation with them. These syndicates will also have interest in some of the quests you undertake, and your choices in those quests can also increase or decrease your standing with the faction. The dialogue at the end of one of the new missions implies that it was originally a contract for the Crimson Dawn, but Kay decided to ally with the Pike Syndicate instead, and now they owe her a favor. And by the way, making one of these choices displays your reputation gain or loss next to the dialogue choice, so it's immediately clear what the effects of your actions are. We at least know having a high reputation can lead to unlocking unlocking discounts and special stock at vendors, so it pays to at least keep some of these factions as your friends. We also learned from our interview that there is a high reputation faction gear set you can buy, which includes visual references to either the Syndicate itself or their home planet. So again, you want to keep at least some Syndicates on your good side, especially if you like their looks. My top choice is going to be the Ashiga clan, which are a new faction designed for the game. I just love their whole aesthetic, the armor looks really cool, and their katana-like vibro swords are awesome too. They too seem to have some problems with the Crimson Dawn, which is starting to feel like the biggest bully out of all the Syndicates. But considering the setting of the game, there's of course one faction you'll eventually run into when doing crime, and that is the Empire. They'll function more as a police force, which includes a scaling wanted level that also extends into space. So while you can hop into your ship, the Trailblazer, to get out of a heated situation, if you're wanted by the Empire, you can expect a squadron of TIE fighters on you as soon as you leave a planet's orbit. You can interact with a comms relay in space to wipe your criminal data and lose your wanted status if you can find one, but that does require you get rid of nearby fighters. Luckily, space combat is looking even better than it did in the first gameplay demo. The HUD looks a lot cleaner too, so I'm kinda looking forward to taking on the Empire in space. And there's more to do here than just battle, as we've learned there are also treasure locations, sometimes with multiple hidden reward chests for you to find. The developers mentioned in the interview that these chests can contain various rewards, so finding loot out in space does not necessarily mean that loot is tied to your ship, it can also be something else. And you can also run into random events like that Pike ship that was being attacked that we saw in the forward gameplay. And there's actually a surprisingly large variety of gameplay in the footage we've seen so far. Dogfights, shootouts, and stealthy encounters are interchanged with Uncharted-like platforming sections. These slower paced sections require that you use your grappling hook either to rappel down from high ground or to swing across a gap too large to jump over. There's also a lockpicking minigame and a hacking minigame where you need to guess 3 symbols and make sure they're in the correct order. Those last two also have challenges tied to them, which you can see pop up several times during the gameplay, and as I mentioned earlier, these are tied to the expert system and help you unlock new skills. I'm a bit less sure about other rewards and progression though. We've seen Kay in several outfits, so I think we're able to buy more for her, and thanks to the Ultimate Edition, we know there are also cosmetics for Nyx, your ship, and your speeder bike. So I'm guessing that's one of the things we get to spend our hard-earned credits on, but other than that, we don't really know yet. I'm hoping Jordan can actually give us some clarification, as he's had a hands-on session with Outlaws in LA. So subscribe to not miss our video covering that, and leave a like if you enjoyed this one so far. Now, one thing I also noticed is the variety in locations, as we get to visit crashed cruisers, lively towns, and even orbital space stations. Kay's adventure will take place on multiple planets, including familiar ones like Tatooine, and you can jump between them with your ship's hyperdrive. Once you approach a planet, you can pick from a list of landing spots and fly straight to it. And good to know, there are no loading screens involved in this process, you just fly down to a planet's surface, break into the atmosphere, and reach your landing spot. So this makes traveling from planet to planet, and even doing some space exploration in between missions, a pretty seamless experience. And considering how Massive absolutely nailed the vibes for Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, I have full faith that they'll be able to nail the feel of these planets, both the familiar ones and the new additions made specifically for Outlaws. One thing that should help you get into the smuggler fantasy is playing a hand of the in-universe card game Sabak. While we've no gameplay of this yet, Kay is called by a character called Danka about a potential match, and we also know that having a high reputation with a Syndicate will unlock high-stakes Sabak tables in their hideouts. Jordan also learned in his interview that Lando's questline is also partly tied to playing Sabak matches, so it's an important side activity as well. Don't expect this to turn into the next Gwent though, Sabak is kinda similar to Blackjack, so there's not really a deck building element involved. Still though, it should be another nice side activity to catch your breath in between all the shooting and stealing, and potentially it's also a nice way to make some extra cash. One thing I'm pretty sure we'll be able to spend our credits on are consumables, as Kay has access to several gadgets that can help her out in combat. I already mentioned thermal detonators, which function like a grenade would, but a quick glimpse at her tool wheel shows us that Kay also has access to a set of binoculars, which we can see her use to scout out an area from a distance, and smoke bombs. Now, while we haven't seen those in action, we do know that blowing up a smoke canister sets an enemy up for a stealth takedown. So at least they impair enemies inside the smoke radius, but maybe they also allow you to re-enter stealth like the smoke bombs in Ghost of Tsushima do. We'll of course be making more videos on the game, so make sure to subscribe and not miss those, and leave a like on this one if you enjoyed it. You can also watch Jordan's hands-on preview if it's already up by clicking on the screen, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!